Hi, this is Bob, and welcome to Off the Cuffs. I have with me today Pastor Leab. I'm excited to have him with me today. He is the director of the Dream Center. I'm glad to have him here with me. It's going to be a very interesting conversation to talk about what the Dream Center is, what it does in this community. And basically, I want to talk about you. You're a very interesting young man. I met you some time ago. And so what we always like to do is we like to have our guests introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about you. You know, how did you arrive at the place that you are? Because people want to know who you are. While I know who you are and some things about you, I think that the people that take time to watch us and listen to us would like to know.
Yeah. Okay. I'll try not to take up too long.
No, take your time.
My story is kind of interesting, but, you know, I grew up here in Forsyth County. Well, actually, I grew up out in Davie, but then, you know, most of my friends were in Clemens, and that's where the church is, and grew up there. And so growing up in ministry, I'd always said, I don't want to be a pastor. I don't want to be in ministry because my grandfather's a pastor, my father-in-law's a pastor, and so we see the tough side of ministry. And I'm sure you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
You know, people look at those who were in leadership and think, boy, they've got it made, but they don't understand the heartache that's on the backside of that. So anyway, I started a business called Funnigan's, and it was a family fun center. You know, I'd just worked hard all of my life to open up this business, open it up with a partner. And we opened up in 2008, right as the economy was getting ready to crash. And then a year later, I had an experience in church that I knew God was speaking to me. I've never had an experience like this. I was late for church. I got pulled over by a sheriff. I don't think I've told you this, but I got a ticket on the way to church in Clemens. And so I was sitting on the back row. Typically, I'd have been sitting on the front row with the family, but I was sitting on the back row, and God began to speak to me. And I don't say that lightly. I was watching the pastor minister, but I was not hearing a thing he was saying. So I came up to him after the service, and I said, I believe I'm supposed to be in ministry. And he said, would you pray about it and let me know what you think that is? So I told my wife, I said, we need to go home and have a family meeting after church. And they knew that I don't say that very often. So I had two teenage daughters, and I just cried and told them, I said, I've not been doing what God has called me to do. I was a good dad, had always worked hard, was, doing things like that, but I was not in the position that God had really called me to do. And so the next few years were very difficult because, we had Funnigan's for several more years before we closed. But then
Where was Funnigan's located at?
Right by Haynes Mall. And so
I think I remember
it was a family entertainment. We had bowling and pizza. We had it was a beautiful place. It was just the bad timing. And so, but we lost everything. I just kind of hit reset. So as a grown man, I think I was in my early 40s then, having to start over completely. And I'd worked so hard to get to the place that I was in life. That was difficult. I had to go back to work in third shift, running a full-time youth ministry during the day. And so anyway, fast forward, got in ministry, was ordained several years later. And then back in 2019 was sent to the Dream Center. And I thought, well, our church is in Clemens, but they were going to send me over there. And I didn't know how I would like that. But when you're in the right place, God gives you the grace that you need. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. I absolutely love the work that we're doing at the Dream Center.
So where did you go to high school at?
Davie High.
What did you do when you left high school?
Went in the Marine Corps.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're a veteran.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Thank you for your service.
Yep. Went in the Marines.
And came back.
Yep. Spent 2 years overseas, on and off.
Yeah.
And I left right before my oldest daughter. I left right before she turned 1, and I didn't come home till after she was 2. I was supposed to be gone 6 months.
Wow.
And so I can relate to these guys that get deployed. And, back then, you can't just pick up or, dial up somebody. It was very difficult. I think we were paying like $8 a minute to talk.
Yeah.
So when I got to the Marines, we had an $800 phone bill we had to pay off for some period of time. But yeah.
So let me ask you a question. So I've been to the Dream Center.
Yep.
How did that vision come about? How did you all create that? What was the vision behind that?
Yeah. So our pastor, our senior pastor, one Saturday, he tells this story, and I think it's very interesting. He didn't have a message for Sunday. He'd been praying all week, and on Saturday, God told him Isaiah 58, and that's all he said. And he tells the story. He said, I didn't even know there was 58 chapters in Isaiah, but he went to Isaiah 58, and it's God speaking. And he said, is this not the fast that I've called you to? to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, and to bring the lonely wanderer into your house. And so he opened up a food bank. Now, this was close to 40 years ago. This was just a few years after the church got started. So we opened up a food bank. Well, it was a closet. It was really just a closet. And then we moved it to a little building across the street. That house has been torn down for years now. And then 20 years ago, we moved off North Patterson, and we've been there ever since.
You know, I've been in your church several times. I always enjoy going and listening to the word. A couple questions that come to my mind, and I want to talk about them. You know, a lot of times I ask questions that come to my heart, and they may be uncomfortable. And if they are, you don't have to answer them. But you know what amazes me when I go to your church? I see black, white. I see a multitude of races of people worshiping together. And I know that, you know, a lot of times people talk about keeping things separate, the church and the state. You know, we keep a lot of things. And I'm always amazed that when I come there, I see that. You know, people will tell you that Sunday is the most segregated day of the week.
Yeah.
And so I've always been amazed at that when I go and I see black and white people worshiping together. I think it's a beautiful thing when people of all races come together and worship together.
Yeah.
It actually touches me because it gives me hope that some of the isms, some of the separations, some of the divides that we have in our society are slowly and constantly being broken down. And so when I went to the Dream Center and I saw what you all were doing off of Patterson Avenue, I saw what you all were doing. I saw not only were you clothing people, not only were you feeding people, you were educating people. And that was powerful to me because, you know, I guess it goes back to teach a man how to fish, right?
That's exactly right.
He can fish for himself. But if you feed him, you got to do that constantly.
Yeah.
And then, but if you give a man knowledge, you've given him a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so, how do you guys do that? How do you fund that? How do you do that? Because what I saw was truly an amazing operation. I mean, it was a well-oiled, run operation.
Yeah. Let me go back and answer another question. You didn't really ask a question, but because we ask sometimes, how did we create what we have at Agape Faith Church? And I guess maybe a couple things that come to mind. One is it's the culture we set.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you decide whether you want to or not the culture that's inside the sheriff's office. And culture should be designed just like everything else. It can come by default, but we designed a culture, Agape Faith Church, overflowing with love. And so, pastor, for years, he said, I want my church to look like heaven looks. And so, so when people come in, one of the things every time we have new members, you'll hear several other people say, when I came here, I felt loved. And so, that's what we think Jesus would be like. He would provide grace. And so that's how we created that. Because even at 52, I sometimes look around and say, how did this happen? And so right
at
now,
60, right? At 60, when I walk in a lot of churches, I say, wow, and it's refreshing because, you know, if you look out through life, we go to school together, we go to the military together, we date, we do so many things together as a people.
mm-hmm.
But Sunday morning, it's a truly different story, you know. But I guess that's another conversation for another day. But when I look at the Dream Center, what I saw was amazing to me. I saw operations manager that was there, I saw women who were making sure people, I saw people organizing, I saw logistics, I saw everything. And I wondered to myself, who pays for this? The rental space. Who takes care of all this? That's a huge task. And again, you know, one of the things that I was having a conversation the other day with the United Way, and we was talking about who will stand in the gap. Having been sitting in the seat, the office of the people, I have seen things, and I'm from Winston-Salem, born and raised here. I thought I knew a lot about this city, which I did, but I know even more now. I know the intricacies of how things are happening, how they happen. And I'm amazed and I'm grateful that we have people that are standing in the gap. Because if they were not, some of the isms, some of the poverty, some of the problems that you see would be greater than what they are. And so I applaud organizations, places that are doing the things that you're doing to provide hope for the hopeless, to give clothes to those that don't have, to give food to those that don't have, and to just do a plethora of things in our community. And so when you invited me to come up there, I get invitations every day to come somewhere. And some places I go, and some places I go and I look and I say, wow, they're making a difference in this community. And you're making a difference in this community. So my question is, how do you all keep that pace? How many years you say you've been up there?
I've been there going on 3 years.
How many years you guys have had that operation?
20. We've been there off 20 years.
So you've had the Dream Center. I'm not talking about the church.
Right.
You've had the Dream Center.
Yeah, it was called the Triad Dream Center.
Wow.
And so we changed the name to Dream Center Forsyth County because we really just focus on our community here in Forsyth County.
Wow.
Yeah.
So where do you guys get the funding from for something like that?
So right now, and hopefully I won't get in trouble for saying this, but we've talked a lot about the church, but we really at Agape Faith Church don't want, if you come to the Dream Center, you're not going to see Agape Faith Church anywhere because it's not about our church.
I noticed that.
Yeah, you're not going to see it, the name of the church. And we don't brag that we are one of the, almost the primary provider for the Dream Center, the funding. And so when I came in 2019, I started looking around. I had to get my bearings. It took me a little bit. And I said, I love that we're giving away food. We're giving away clothes. This was before we had counseling. I said, are we helping anybody though?
So you guys provide counseling there as well?
Yeah, Family Life Counseling. It's a separate 501c3. And they help run.
So what are some of the areas you counsel people in? So
drug addiction.
So somebody needing help, what are some of the areas?
Yeah. One of the main things that we provide is drug addiction and addiction recovery. And we've got Celebrate Recovery every Tuesday night. And that's just a beautiful community because it's we are faith-based, but it's a 12-step program. And so it's like AA, except for you're going to get the gospel in there as well. And I've mentioned this to you before, but, we are not a transactional place. In other words, I don't want somebody just to come in and get food and leave, and that be our only time that I see that person, I get to touch that person. I believe in we're building relationships. And so I started asking questions. Are we changing anybody? Are we helping anybody's family? Because it frustrates me to see the amount of resources that we in Forsyth County give out, which we need those. We need to give out those resources, but the numbers are not changing. We've still got too many people in poverty. We still have too many hungry children. And so we've got to be coming together and figuring out the answers to these questions.
Wow. So why did you all choose that location?
You're asking something that I wasn't a part of 20 years ago, but they looked around.
So you've always been in that same location for 20 years?
Yeah, always been in that same building for 20 years.
Wow.
Yep. We've changed suites. So we used to be on the front of the building, but we've always been right there in that same spot. Of course, now I claim that as my community. I mean, it's, especially I know that community. I know the area around that.
Where's your church located?
It's in Clemens.
So you all worship in Clemens, but then you brought the Dream Center to
where the most need was.
That's where I was going.
Yeah. Now there's hurt people and broken people all over Forsyth County. We know
without question.
But there's a big need, especially for food and clothes in that community. But along with that, you've got families that poverty and dysfunction has so many faces. And so we've started with counseling. Celebrate Recovery is a great way for somebody to plug in and for us to get the relationship, but trying to figure out how to help their children. And we're trying to address that. I just had a conversation with one of the assistant principals at Mineral Springs. And so we're getting ready to kick off some mentoring. I know the city's looking at that, and there's other people addressing mentoring as well. But mentoring, and then we've partnered with another nonprofit that's providing halfway homes for men and women. I think you may be familiar with that, but we're working closely with that men's and women's home that are both in close proximity to the Dream Center. But we need to expand. And so I guess, you were asking me about funding. So really, my needs are met right where I'm at today, but I have a heart for reaching more people. I have a vision for reaching more people. And so as I can bring on other partners and really churches, because it's not about a church's name, it's really about people who have a heart.
So you're looking for partnerships, collaboration, cooperation, and all of that.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, we have to do this together.
We do.
Yeah.
In 2018, I said that we're better together. I said that when I was being sworn in, right?
Yep.
And I was standing there looking out into the audience, and I saw a range of people that came to support me, and it came to my mind that we are better together, right? And I have said that since 2018, that we are better together. You have sustained that for 20 years, you said?
20 years.
That's strong. That's
Yeah.
strong. I travel around the country a lot. Matter of fact, I'm going to be headed up to Boston in the upcoming week, going to school for a couple of days up there. And when I travel around to various places, various communities, I always come back and say, I live in one of the best counties in the country. And I say that not because I'm from here, but I say that because while we have issues, we have people that are willing to address those issues. While we have some gaps, there are organizations, there are people that are now coming forward and standing in those gaps. We may not always agree, but we find a common ground to help one another. And I love that. And I applaud you and your church for doing that. And the fact that you said that you welcome partnerships, that's strong, because most people have their little silo and they don't want nobody else to come in their silo.
You're right.
But the fact that you have sustained this for 20 years and saying, hey, we've done it for 20 years, but yet we still welcome partnership.
Yeah.
I think that's the key to a lot of things that are happening here is partnership. Is partnership. Yeah. We need those partnerships. We got to have those. Too many things are happening in our community for us not to have partnership.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got to be able to work together, and it does take some compromise.
Yeah.
It does take, I realize that I'm a white man in predominantly minority neighborhoods, but once people get to know me, they know that I love them the same as everybody else. And so have we had difficulties making some of those partnerships? We have, but we've got some partners now. We're just starting to get some partnerships that you'll probably be hearing about over the next couple months. I'm really excited about.
Somebody sent me a picture. I can't remember what it was when you said being a white man. Somebody sent me a picture of two graves. One was the grave of a white guy. One was the grave of a black guy, right? And they pointed out that the graves were dug to the exact same depth, right? And I guess what they were trying to say was that at the end of the day, right, we going back to the same place from whence we've come, right? We all are of the same creator.
Yep.
And the fact of the matter is that we can't let complexion, we can't let party affiliations, we can't let none of those things separate us from living out and being the people that we were created to do, created to be, and doing the things that we were created to do.
Yeah.
I see that all the time in my travels, that if we get beyond that, we could be greater, stronger.
Yeah, and this is another topic, but if if everybody who's around you looks and thinks like you are never going to get out of your bubble. That was one of the things I appreciated about our church. You know, some of my best friends were African Americans.
Yeah.
And some of them do not think like I do as far as anyway, I'll just say it like this. All of our beliefs are not the same. So sitting down and having conversation, crying was in some of these conversations.
Yeah.
I've grown so much as a man, and it's opened me up to realize that we're fed certain narratives through media, or through family or whatever,
Yeah.
and you can begin to think that way. But if you can sit down with somebody who doesn't think like you and have a conversation, I can kind of see where you're coming from, and they can see where I'm coming from. So we need more of that. I don't know how we make that happen.
I've been reading a book, Mind Sight, right? And it talks about how we see ourselves internally versus then we transport it externally, and then how we give these same habitual responses based on how we have shaped ourselves. And so I started thinking about that when you said that, if all of your friends think like you, you're in the wrong circle of friends. That is so true. I have found that I have to surround myself with a diversified group. I have to. Me and Dr. Pettit over at Carolina University, he and I used to do a conversation every Friday, and it was entitled Black and White, Can We Just Talk? And he would give his perspective from a white male. I would give mine from a black male's perspective, how I saw it, then versus how he saw it. And then we would talk about, from a biblical perspective, what was the right way. Right. And it was very interesting. But at the end of the day, he and I are friends, great friends, I've known him 4 years now. And you're right. If everybody in your circle thinks like you, you need to enlarge your circle, right? Right. Yeah. And you can't become comfortable, You've got to broaden yourself. I put myself in spaces to be uncomfortable sometimes. That's where the growth takes place.
You're exactly right.
I have done that intentionally. Put myself in spaces that are uncomfortable. Because I've grown a lot being in spaces. Yeah. Right. I always give the example when I started flying and I looked at the dash and I'm looking at all these, the tachometer, the altimeter. I'm looking at all these things, right? It's confusing. And I don't want no part of this. But when you start breaking it down, right, at first I was uncomfortable with what I was seeing. So I didn't want any part of it. But the longer I stayed in an uncomfortable place and I understood how it works, then I became familiar how to navigate through it. And so I think that comfortability and capability, it's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, that's a big lesson.
Oh.
I just told some young adults last night, I said, if your dreams don't scare you, if your goals, your expectations, if they don't challenge you or scare you, then you're living too comfortably.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the thing is, and we're at an age now that we know that it's okay to be uncomfortable because you're going to grow and you're going to learn. But that's intimidating when you're young because you're afraid, this is going to expose me. People are going to see I don't know what I'm doing. None of us know what we're doing until we learn. You didn't know how to be a sheriff. I mean, you had other experiences, right? But you're in a new space now, and who knows what's next for you? But you, until you do something, I was uncomfortable being a pastor. But I stepped in that role, and God's given me a grace. I'm heavily tattooed, actually. Yeah. And so I don't look like a typical pastor. Right. But and so people look at me certain ways. But God has given me a grace to reach people that many people couldn't reach.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's okay. It's okay to be uncomfortable.
Very, very much. That's pretty strong. And you get to a place in life where you realize that it's all right to be you. You come to that self-actualization where you're comfortable with yourself. My children had never seen me cry, right? Never. And even when my wife passed, their mother, they didn't see me cry. And I have gotten to a place in my life now where I'm comfortable with, if my emotions take me there, that I'll shed a tear. And, I've had conversations like that with my boys, that it's all right to be an emotional being, to still have emotion. You and I, we years apart, but, men didn't show emotions. You were. And
I was raised that same way.
yeah.
So.
And so, I didn't cry in public. You don't let nobody see the weakness in you. You don't let anybody see this. You don't let them see that, right? And I subscribed to that for years in my life. And somebody made a comment to me when we did the press on the shooting out at Mount Tabor, and it touched a moment in my heart. And a friend of mine called me and said that it wasn't good to see a black man crying, right? It was a sign of weakness. And I responded to them that I'm a man, whether you see me crying or whether you see me smiling, never confuse that. And it's just amazing how, as you talked about, society places these things on us, and we start to live up to that bill, not realizing that at the end of the day, we all are the same creator. Mm-hmm. Whether you white, whether you black, whether you green, whatever you may be, we all are the same creator. I always say this, that, if you got sick right now and had to have surgery that would save your life, and the surgeon that came in and they gave you surgeons to choose from, would you choose the surgeon because he was black, because he was white, because he was public, was he Democrat, independent, or would you want the best surgeon?
Yeah, you're going with the best.
You're going with the best surgeon.
Yeah, always.
Always, always. And so I think that we get caught up so many times, and I know history has caused us to feel and think a certain way, and sometimes even in modern times, things happen to cause us, but we can't go back. We can't go back to that. We got to keep pushing forward. And so I'm so proud of what you're doing in our community, the community which I grew up in, as a matter of fact. I'm so proud of the Dream Center. I'm so proud of what you all are doing, the counseling, the education piece, feeding the people, clothing the people, but yet at the same time growing their minds and giving them hope. I want to thank you for being a part of this conversation. I want you to know that here, if there's anything that we can do for you, please don't hesitate to ask. Keep doing what you're doing. I want you to give the address to where the Dream Center is, because I want you to invite people to come by and see the operation. They need to see that firsthand.
Yeah, I love to give people tours.
I want them. That's what I want you to do. I want people to come and see what's happening, to see that you are standing in the gap, to see that you are changing lives.
Yeah, it's heavy. And the reason why we continue to do what we do is because we do love people.
Yeah.
I'm not doing a job. I'm really not. I love that community. I love people. But it's 3650 North Patterson Avenue, Suite J.
Yeah.
We've got 3 doors, and so but if they emailed us, if they call us, we would love to be able to show somebody around. If anybody needs our services,
put your number out there. Share your number.
Yeah, they're more than welcome. Let me give you my email. That's probably the best way that people can get. It's Pastor Chris at Dream Center FC, Forsyth County, dreamcenterfc.com. So Pastor Chris at dreamcenterfc.com.
Okay.
Somebody emails me, I'd love to show them around. If there's a church or if another pastor, even another organization hears this and thinks, because we've got some people that are just now starting to hear what we're doing. We've had, there's a realty in Kernersville.
Do you accept volunteers?
Accept volunteers? Yeah, we do.
Do they have to go to your church?
Yeah. No. It's not about our church.
I know. I just wanted to emphasize that. I know that, but I just wanted to emphasize that.
And here's the thing, especially with churches, it's not about
I had to slide that in, but
them just coming to partner with us. They have people in their church that may need our services. And so especially for medium and smaller sized churches that may not be able to have a big outreach, then they can come and do outreach from the Dream Center and say, that's our Dream Center. That's what I want. I want another church to be able to say that this is our Dream Center. We, if they partner with us, can say, we're helping to provide food for our community. We're helping to clothe our community. That's my heart.
So you're looking for partnerships to come to the Dream Center and be a part of what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So that they can say, this is my Dream Center.
I like that.
And this is what we are doing in the community. Not Pastor Chris, not Agape Faith Church, but this is what we are doing. Yeah.
Well, Pastor Chris, I want you to know that I have enjoyed talking with you, my brother. Always a pleasure to see you. I wish you continued success at the Dream Center.
Thank you.
Again, many blessings to what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep saving God's people. Keep doing exactly what you're doing. I love you. And as always, you're welcome to stop by anytime.
I love you too, Sheriff.
Thank you. I want to thank you for joining us for another segment of Off the Cuffs. Thank you again.